Without brushes, we really can't do much with our gel. Today we're going to deep dive into how we use our brushes properly, brush care, and also how to troubleshoot some of the most common issues. Hey guys, Liz from the Nail Hub, and today we are going to talk about one of my favorite things that I own a million of, which are brushes. I literally have so many brushes. Like, do I have enough brushes, do you think? I absolutely love brushes, and one of the biggest things that people don't realize when they get into using potted gel, builder gel, glitter gel, color gel, anything that doesn't come in a gel polish bottle, we need to use a brush to apply it. And this is actually my favorite way to do gel nails. I much prefer using a pot and a brush because it allows me to change my application, enhance my application, and do all kinds of nifty things just by switching out the tool that I use to apply. So today we are going to deep dive into brush information, and as always, I've got some good terminology and an overview for you. So we are going to talk about the different types of brushes, and what I mean by that is different materials that are used for brushes, some of the differences that you might notice between brushes as you are looking for some. We're also going to talk about shapes, brush use, application and removal, which what I mean by this, and we'll get into it in a second, is basically how we can use our brushes in different ways to both apply product properly and remove product properly if we need to remove anything. We're going to talk about brush care because that's one of the biggest things that I think people miss out on, and it affects their ability to keep their brushes for a long period of time. We're going to talk about trimming because I know a lot of you guys are obsessed with knowing how people get teeny tiny brushes to use for fine details. And we're also going to talk about troubleshooting, what you do when you run into issues with your brushes. Terminology you guys are going to need to know is solvent, solvent-free, because I'm going to use those words a lot as we move forward. We're going to talk about brush bellies. We're going to talk about tongues. All this stuff sounds kind of interesting. We're just reading this list that I wrote. We're also going to talk about clear gel because clear gel is something I'm also going to refer to quite frequently, and this is something important for you guys to understand. So we are going to start with, I'm going to start with just the shapes and types of brush materials so you guys can get a little bit more familiar with how brushes come, and we'll go over a few differences between, different things that you might see out there. Okay, so I have my nice little table here. I've got lots of brushes, and I'm also going to show you guys some that don't have caps because that is what I used to see when I first started. Brushes in general, they come in two materials. They either come in synthetic or they come in natural hair, okay? And there's some advantages and disadvantages to both. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so I can show you guys a little bit more detail. So I've got lots of different brushes here. I'm going to show you a synthetic brush first. Okay. This actually looks like it's natural hair, but it's actually synthetic. And if I can, actually, let me zoom in a lot so you guys can see this. Okay. So this is actually a synthetic brush. I do have some product on here, so that's why it looks so shiny. This is a natural hair brush. Looks a little bit different. Okay. This is also a natural hair brush, just to show you the difference. So it's kind of difficult to tell the difference just by looking at them. So this one on the right is the natural hair. This one on the left is synthetic. And also to throw one more synthetic style in here. Let me show you one more. Oh, if I can open this, geez Louise. And this one. Okay. Gosh, I really had that on there. Okay, so we've got, these are both different types of synthetic material, and then we have natural over here. And this is actually Kolinsky, which is a type of sable hair. Sables are a type of animal, and they raise the animals for the specific type of hair to use for the brushes. They don't have to kill the animals, they just trim the hair off like a little haircut and use it just like you do with wool or anything like that, okay? So no, you can't really tell the difference by looking at these side by side. Maybe the black one you can tell. But using them, you will notice a difference. And so I wanted to talk about a couple of the advantages and disadvantages of synthetic versus natural. Okay, so with natural hair, just like our hair, natural hair is going to be more of a porous type of material. And so gel is going to grip to it more than synthetic. One of the advantages of natural hair, I think, is it feels very smooth when you're applying any type of product. Even with acrylic brushes, for example, most of them are Kolinsky sable hair. But acrylic is very different. Acrylic, we need a lot of natural hair because we need this brush to absorb liquid when we're applying our powder. With gel brushes, what we're really using the gel brush as is a spatula. And we're going to get into that in a second with our application. But with natural hair, what I've noticed in the feeling of the consistency when using natural hair brushes is it does have a little bit more flexibility to it. It does absorb a little bit more product, and it does feel very glidey. That's the only way for me to describe it. One of the disadvantages of natural hair is since it is porous, it's much more likely to get product trapped inside of it. So if you accidentally cure gel in your brush and it's natural hair, you might as well just throw it in the garbage, because after you're done using acetone to remove all the stuff out of it and whatever, a lot of times that brush is ruined and it just never wants to release from that natural hair because it's able to grip so much onto the actual fibers. With synthetic, we actually have a brush that is made to feel like natural hair, but it's actually made out of plastic. So we get a much kind of easier ability to remove product out of the brush, especially if you accidentally cure gel on it. A lot of times the gel will just pop right off of the plastic because it's a smooth surface. The one thing I have noticed about synthetic a lot of times is it does feel, it depends on the brush manufacturer, but it does feel a little bit rougher and the bristles don't spread out as nicely and it feels a little bit stiffer. Everything stays together really nice and tight. So depending on your personal preference, there's really no difference in my personal opinion. I don't see any difference in, oh, you can't do quality nails if you use synthetic brushes. It's absolutely personal preference. And I have found that my personal preferences, I prefer either synthetic brushes that are made to be like natural hair or natural hair. I actually prefer natural hair brush, but that's just my bias. But just so you guys know, there are some advantages and disadvantages. And you'll just notice that the best way is if you have one of each and you apply the same exact product, you will feel the difference in the brush. And it's just personal preference. It just depends on which one you like and which one you don't. Okay, so I have my brushes here. As you notice, these are all actual oval shaped. This one's kind of a squoval, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so my autofocus isn't so crazy. Okay, so we've got over here, the black one over here, this is synthetic. You can see it's a little bit like, it looks like plastic, and it's got a little bit of a squoval shape. These two over here are what you would consider traditional round or oval brushes. So you can see slight differences in the body of the brush or the belly of the brush. And this one is a little bit more rounded, a little bit fuller, and this one is a little bit thinner. But when we turn them to the side, okay, so if we look at the profile, you'll notice that they go from about thickest to thinnest. And again, this is total personal preference, but I actually love brushes where it comes to a fine point like this on the side. I get that really, really thin edge. So you can see these two brushes come to a very thin edge. And this one does as well, but because of the synthetic material it's made out of, it does have kind of a little fuzzy bit on the end, okay? So all of these brushes have gel on them. That's why they look so nice and clean. And if I bring my other buddy in here that doesn't have product on him, you can see little hairs sticking out and he doesn't look quite so put together. And he does have a little bit more of a belly to him. He's a little bit thicker. So you'll see this if you try to use paint brushes, like actual paint brushes from a paint store, or you use cheap gel brushes, a lot of times you'll see that they're very thick and the bristles are not as nicely kind of evened out. So a high quality brush should really come to a nice, like a nice end, and shouldn't need to be trimmed. Like this one literally out of the box or out of the package came to this edge right here without me even needing to trim any stray hairs or anything, okay? So these are all kind of oval brushes, oval shapes. Also, what you'll notice with other brushes is they come in different angles. These are used for cleaning smile lines, or you can even use them for one-stroke nail art, if you've ever seen one-stroke nail art. We also have different types of art brushes. So very, very thin liners. Here's another angular. You can see this one's longer, okay, but same kind of angle on it. And again, angular brushes can be used for all different types of art, as well as creating smile lines or even cleaning smile lines. And you'll also notice that all my brushes come with caps. So what are caps for? Caps are actually really important. They do two things. They protect the bristles from getting hit in whatever container, especially if you're someone who wants to put these in a container in your drawer. If you end up smashing the bristles on the end all the time, pretty soon they're going to get very bent and frayed. So a cap actually protects those bristles inside, and it also protects your brush from air and light. When we're working with solvent-free gels, you don't have to worry so much about air because there are no air drying chemicals in the gel to make it dry by itself, but you do have to worry about light. So we want to make sure that our brushes are completely light proof. And again, I can show you a slightly different one. So here's another brush with a cap. This one actually has a little hole in the end of it. Some of them have holes because of the manufacturing process, some of them don't. But one of the things you want to notice about brushes and caps is a lot of times inside here, they have a little plastic stopper of some kind. And actually, while I was taking this one off, this one actually came off, so I'll show you what this looks like. So this one, the plastic stopper just came off on my brush. No big deal, I can put it back in the cap. But typically, brushes have some kind of rubber stopper up inside the brush head, up inside the brush cap. And I have noticed that people, when they're getting gel brushes for the first time, they really shove that cap onto their brush, and it ends up pushing this little plastic ring up inside the cap, like up in here, and then pretty soon your brush cap doesn't fit. Other brush caps might have like a metal ring inside, like this. So you can see there's like a little tension ring right in there. And if this gets pushed up inside, again, it's not going to stop at the correct position on the brush. So we want to make sure when we close our brush that we watch where our bristles are so we don't smash our bristles as we go into the cap, and just gently close them. You don't need to smash them on there. This is nice and secure, and it's going to protect my brush from air, light, dust, everything, okay? And I can fix the one that fell out. I think it was this guy. Okay, so here you can see the difference. So can you guys see that this one has a cap? So this one here, the plastic cap is on the outside. This one, it fell out. So I can put that in here. And I will fix that and put it back. If you accidentally do shove your cap all the way up in there, the best thing to do is try and use like an orange wood stick to drag it back down in there. Or you can actually put some like washi tape or something here on the brush to give it something to actually hit against. So it's just, again, very gentle, closing it, and then same thing with this. So very gentle, watching my bristles as I put it in, and closing it. And this one, I don't know why it's so tense, but I must have put the wrong cap on the wrong brush. So I'll find the cap that goes with this guy. Okay, so we talked about angle, we talked about round. There's also square. Okay, so this one is square. So you can see it's got a different end on it. It doesn't have that kind of ovally rounded shape on it. It's just square. And the nice thing about square, I think, is when you're working on toes or you're working on fingers that have more of a square cuticle area, I really like the fact that this lines up with that, especially on big toes and stuff like that. It's more of a square area. And so I can just push my product up against the border of my cuticle area, and it's just really nice. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know about shapes. There's going to be different lengths of liners. There's going to be different shapes like round, flat, square, angular, liner brushes. Liner brushes are just the long, skinny ones that you use for art. And one of the biggest questions I get asked about liner brushes is how you can trim them, especially if you have a cheapo one that comes and it's kind of big and fat. you can actually trim them. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that as well, just in case you want to know. Okay, so I have my brush here. Okay, and this one does not come with a cap, and it's probably got gritty product stuck in it, but no big deal, who cares, right? This one is not one that I typically use. This is just one that sits in my little container. And as you can see right around here, if you guys can see this, right around the base of the brush, you'll notice that you can see hairs missing. And I've actually trimmed this brush before. It was much, much thicker when I first got it. And sometimes I use cheap brushes for things like if I'm going to use them for glue and I want to just toss it in the garbage, or if I forgot my brush and I need to buy one when I'm on the road and I can't find the brush that I like, I usually have to buy whatever brush I can find and trim it down. So a lot of people, when they're going to trim their brush, they go ahead and they take nippers. Okay, so they take nippers and they basically just go across the side of the brush and they cut all of it off. So they literally have like an L-shaped brush now. You don't want that, because what it does is it makes this brush flat instead of circular. We want it to be kind of a cone. We don't want it to be a flat brush. So what you want to do is, when you're wanting to trim your brush, take a pair of nippers if that's easier, and you can kind of like start to segregate some of the bristles, okay? And you're going to want to just trim a couple hairs on one side and pull them out like that. Okay, and trim them as close to the base as you can. And then you're going to twist your brush a little bit, maybe about a quarter of a turn, and you're going to trim a couple more, and literally hairs, like a couple hairs at a time. And then you're going to twist it again, and you're going to trim it again. And then you're going to get this nice cone shape, and it's going to get nice and skinny for you. Okay, so see how I made that much thinner, and it's not getting flat on me because I'm trimming it evenly all the way around. Do a little bit at a time. Nippers are probably the easiest thing to do, but remember what we talked about with our cuticle lesson is, do not use the nippers you use for skin for doing this kind of stuff. Okay, you need to have a pair of nippers that you're going to use for trimming hairs, taking off crystals, stuff like that. Or you can also use some typical nail scissors if you want to do that, but I actually find that nippers are the easiest because you can just get teeny little bit and snip it off. But do not use, and I'll repeat this while looking at you, do not use your skin nippers or skin scissors for doing this kind of stuff, because that's exactly how you wear out your nippers and your cuticle scissors, just like we talked about in our cuticle lesson, okay? All right, so that is how you trim a brush when you're wanting to trim it. I'm going to zoom out a lot, okay? Now I want to talk about how we actually use our brushes, because this is something that I think a lot of people get confused about. And then we'll talk about how we clean them and how we store them afterwards. Okay, so I have a color gel here, and I've already stirred it, and this probably would be, we're going to talk about this later when we get into application, but I'll show you guys how to stir this really quickly as well. Potted gels, unlike bottled we shake them, right? Because that helps agitate the color and the clear gel inside the bottle. But with potted gels, we don't have that. So we're going to take a clean spatula, and we are going to gently stir the gel around, okay? Don't do it vigorously because you're going to make a lot of bubbles. So if you just go in one direction, nice and slow, and if it's a nice thin color gel like this, you can absolutely get away with it. If you have builder gel, I recommend you don't mix your builder gel unless absolutely necessary, because it will make bubbles. And if you do, then you need to kind of fold everything in. But you just want to scrape the bottom and really get all of that color pigment, if there is any, off the bottom of the jar and up and mixed into all of this nice, lovely clear gel. That's a good idea to do with almost any gel before you're going to use it. Okay, and then with my spatula, I just take a wipe and squeegee off the gel, and I can put that back in my container. Okay, so with our brush, and I actually have, this is a good time to show you guys the differences in my brushes. Okay, so my brushes, I own a lot of them, obviously. These are actually really old. I've had these for a long time. But what I wanted to mention is that it's very important to have more than one brush, okay? So this brush, all these brushes, as you notice right here, these are all exactly the same brush, okay? And what I like to do is designate a brush for light colors, dark colors, and clear. Light colors would be like white, light pinks, anything that doesn't have a very, very dark color to it. My dark brush is absolutely for colors like this, and my clear gel, my clear brush I only use for clear gel. Now, the way I did these is I put the gel on the cap, but what I would actually recommend is and I did these a long time ago when I first started, I've had these for a long time. I actually started putting the gel on the bottom of the brush, because if I take all the caps off while I'm working, then I might forget which cap goes with which. And so I actually put like glitter gel on the end of this brush because it's my glitter gel brush. And then I put black or lighter colors on the other ends, or you can put like crystals if you want to. However you want to decorate your brushes to designate them, I think is really important, because you don't want to get color gel in your clear gel, you don't want to get color gel in your white gel, and also you don't want your lighter colors to get mixed together. And because I always leave gel on my brushes, which is really important, I don't want those things to mix. So I absolutely recommend buying more than one brush so that you can use it for colors, light colors, clear, without having to worry about cleaning your brushes over and over again, because over cleaning them really does a number. Okay, so I'm going to use my dark brush, and actually I'm going to use the square, the flat, just so you guys can see. Okay, so when I am going to pick up gel with my brush, and this is also extremely important, okay, I like to pick it up out of the center of the jar, and then I scrape the back of my brush on the edge of the jar, okay? So like that. So what you should end up with is gel only on one side of your brush. Why do we do that? Well, because when we're gonna go paint someone's finger, we don't want gel to be on the back side, because if we're trying to get into a small area, it helps us to control where the color is gonna go. So try and keep gel only on one side of your brush. And if you have too much, you can just scrape it off on the inside of your jar like so, and it'll slip back down into the side. Don't get crazy picking it up and dragging this. So if I show you from the side a little bit, there's a string attached to my gel when I pick it up, okay? Some gels, the stickier they are, the more of a string they have. Okay, there's a string. Don't do this quickly and drag the string across, because guess what? You're going to get gel on the rim, you're going to get it on the side of your jar, and gel likes to follow gel. So as soon as you actually touch the side with your brush, it's going to make gel start to go all over your jar, and they're going to get really gross and really messy. So try and pick it up from the center and then just scrape the back off like so to break that string. Or you can even come up from the center and just go up and down like that, and it'll also break the string, okay? And then you have gel just on one side of your brush, like that. Okay? All right, you also don't want to get gel up into the handle. So as much as you can, try and keep gel on the lower 3/4 towards the tip of your brush. You really don't need gel over the whole thing. It's hard because sometimes when you're working, you get gel everywhere. But as a general rule, we're really just using about the first 3/4 of our brush belly right here, okay? And when I refer to belly, I mean, like, if this is the head and this is the tail, then the belly is right in the center, okay? And you guys will hear me use that a lot as I talk. The whole area of the brush, sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a cat tongue. Specifically brushes that are this kind of shape, you'll hear it referred to as a cat tongue. No idea where that comes from, but I can kind of see that it does look kind of like a tongue. So you'll sometimes hear people refer to the tongue, the belly, the body sometimes of the brush people refer to, okay? And if you want to start over, just scrape your brush on the edge of your jar, and then you can start over, okay? So that's how we do that. Now, when we want to clean our brush, let's say we've used our color, we're done, we've got some residue on our brush, okay? But this is my dark color brush. All I'm gonna do is take a clean gauze wipe, and I'm gonna put the brush down, and then I'm going to put the wipe over and squeegee off the gel gently and pull it out, okay? So can you guys see that I've got all that excess gel off? You can also do this with, for example, I like to use my mat. This is actually not my table. This is actually a mat. And I'll show you guys just for a second. Let me zoom out. So I actually made these. These are essentially food grade silicone that I specifically made into a specific thickness and a specific size for my nail table. And it protects my whole work area. So if I go show you guys my whole table, okay? So it actually goes all the way out here and protects my work area. And it's very flexible, it's very soft, but I can wipe my brushes on it. And the reason why I love this is because I can do it without any lint. So once I squeegee, if I want to, like for example, I just love these. But if you don't have one of these, it's totally fine. So let's say I have some gel on my brush that I want to get off. I can wipe it on my mat, and I can continue to wipe my brush until I get all the excess gel off, and it'll just stop. Notice how I'm only doing it in one direction, okay? And I can also reshape my brush on my mat and get it nice and tucked together before I put my cap on. And then when I'm done, I do that with all my color gels, my clear gels, everything. And then when I'm done, all I do is I take some alcohol, or you can even use acetone, and I just wipe off my mat. And then I throw this in the garbage. I do prefer that to gauze wipes because gauze wipes do have, any type of nail wipes, they do have some kind of lint, and I like to keep lint off of my brushes as much as possible. Okay, so that is how we pick up our gel. So how do we clean our brushes? Well, as you noticed, I didn't really clean this. I didn't put alcohol on it. I didn't put acetone on it. I left gel on my brush. It's going to keep my bristles together. It's going to keep them moisturized. It's going to make them last longer. But you can only really do that with solvent-free gel. So with gel, some gels do have solvents in them. And a lot of times you can tell. How do you tell? Because if you take a palette or a tile or a nail form or any type of surface that is not porous and you put some gel on it, I would say put a dot of whatever gels you want to test, maybe put Scotch tape or something to label them, put them in your drawer or somewhere that's absolutely dark but has access to air, and see if they get thicker overnight. If they get thicker overnight just by sitting out in the air in a dark room, it means that they have air drying chemicals in them. And a lot of times we refer to that as it includes solvents, because the solvents kind of thin out the products, allow those products to dissolve, and then through the process of evaporation, harden the product, okay? And again, I'm talking in very layman's terms right now, but that's in general what we're talking about. So with solvent-free gel, it doesn't have any of those ingredients. So solvent-free gel, for example, the brands that I love to use, do not air dry. If I have them out in the light, yes, they may dry because they're getting exposed to halogen or different types of incandescent bulbs. But if I put them on a palette or on a nail form, absolutely in a dark drawer and with access to air, they will not dry out because they're not exposed to light. And so I like to use solvent-free gels because I can use them on my brushes, I can leave them on my brushes, and it doesn't have any of that drying issue that we see with curing, with chipping, with color changing, with smell, with durability. So I try to stay away from solvents, okay? So if you want to test your gels and see which ones have them in there, obviously you could look in the list of ingredients, but the easiest way for any Joe Schmo to try their gels and see which ones have solvents is, number one, you'll notice a definite smell that smells more like nail polish or paint. But number two is put it on a palette, see if it air dries. Put a little dollop on there, see if it air dries when it's left in a dark place with absolutely no light exposure. If it dries without light exposure, it means it's got air drying chemicals in it. And a lot of gel polishes on the market actually are a blend or a hybrid of regular gel and kind of nail polish ingredients. And so when you put those two together, some of it cures in the light and some of it cures in the air. And the issue with that is when we leave it on our brushes, even though the brush is capped, it could actually dry out inside of our brush, and now we're stuck with a brush that doesn't move, okay? So that's why it's really important to talk about solvent-free, because everything I'm showing today, you need to use solvent-free gels to do that with, all right? Otherwise, stick with the nail polish style gel polish and just use the bottled stuff. But if you want to get into professional potted gels, this is the good information that you guys need to know. Okay, so I have color gel on my brush and I want to clean my brush. Let's say I want to absolutely change this brush from a designated dark gel color brush to a clear gel brush or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to take some clear gel. Okay, so I've got, this is Art Clear, and you guys are probably gonna ask me, what the heck is clear gel? Clear gel in Japan's terms is actually any gel that isn't really base and isn't really top coat. It's kind of like a mixing medium. And if you've ever seen people who do painting, there's actually like mixing mediums that people can use to dilute colors or mix colors or whatever. So clear gel typically refers to a multi-purpose clear gel. It's not really intended for any specific purpose. It's just kind of an all-around awesome gel that you can use for anything. And you'll notice this gel is very thin, and it's gonna actually start bringing the color out. So I can use this gel to dilute my colors to make them translucent. I can use it to clean my brushes. So you'll notice I'm just pressing my brush into my mat here. And if you don't have a nail hub mat, you can absolutely use a tile, a nail form, a piece of saran wrap, a piece of tin foil, anything like that. So you'll notice the clear gel, if I zoom in here, sorry. If I zoom in, okay, so if I zoom in on this, you'll see that I'm pushing the clear gel through the bristles of my brush, okay? So you see the gel come through when I put pressure on my brush, and I'm only doing this in one direction. I'm not doing this on my table. I'm just pressing in one direction to get that gel to come out. And then I can wipe off the back of it, and you'll see how much color comes out. So again, I can press in one direction into the clear gel, get that clear gel up into my bristles till it starts to seep through the backside. Okay. And I can even do the backside if I want to. So I'm just basically pushing this clear gel into my brushes, and I only do this once every blue moon. Usually I don't do this all the time because it is a process, but you just press the clear gel into your brush, and then you can wipe that out. And so you can start to see that the color starts to come out. But now my brush doesn't have that pink tint to it anymore. The clear gel is gone, okay? So that is how you clean your brushes, is you actually use gel. Don't use acetone, don't use a lot of alcohol, because every time you do that, you're drying out the bristles of your brush. Less of an issue with synthetic brushes. And if you really do want to cleanse your brush with alcohol, what I recommend is put some alcohol or cleanser. When I mean cleanser, I mean something that doesn't have scent or color, because if it does, it's going to get residue on your brush and could impact your application. But just regular old alcohol, and again, squeegee it off, and then now we have a nice clean brush, and then I can just kind of push on the sides a little bit, get that nice and tapered again like that, and then I can put my cap on. Okay, so now my brush is nice and clean and protected, and my brush is super happy, and I can wipe down my table and get rid of this. All right, so as you remember, we talked about types of brushes, shapes of brushes, how we pick up color, and how we pick up gel in general. And then we also talked about cleaning them. We talked about trimming. So now I want to talk about application and removal, and also some troubleshooting. Okay, so I've got my trusty red iguana practice hand here. I absolutely love this thing. I know you guys are probably going to freak out because this thing is a little bit creepy, but I have to tell you, this thing is so cool. It's like, ugh. So this is actually April Ryan from Red Iguana. She dipped her hand in silicone, made a model of her hand, and she has one that goes all the way to the wrist, but I actually like this because it can sit on a table. And if you guys are interested, I'm going to put the link here in my video so you guys can get 10% off of these things. They're also posable, so if you want to practice, this thing is so cool. I have owned every practice hand on the planet, but this thing is freaking cool. So it's bendable, the fingers bend. It looks real because it's actually a model of April Ryan's hand. It's firm, it feels like fingers, and it allows me to realistically practice on something that looks like a hand rather than some robot thing or hard, hook fingers or whatever. So I love this thing. Okay, so I've got this hand here. These are plastic tips that are glued onto the hand, and they're already buffed. So I'm just going to pretend that this hand is prepped and ready to go, and we are going to get into how we apply gel with our brushes, okay? So we talked about base coat. You guys already know that. So I want to just talk about color and how we can apply, just so you guys can see it better. I want to apply product, and then I'm going to remove it for you and show you the difference, okay? So again, I'm going to dip into the center of my jar. And again, I typically go up and down like this and break the string, but you can absolutely scrape the back of the brush. So I've only got gel on one side of my brush, which is really important. I'm going to paint the bottom half of the nail first. Okay? And when I paint, something really important to notice is I do not paint with this much pressure on my brush. If I do, look what it does. Okay? So when you are using your gel brush, let's turn this to the side. You do not use it at this angle. If I use it at this angle, watch what it does to the nail. Painting. What the heck? It took all the color off. So when you use a high angle on your brush, it squeegees the gel off. When you use a parallel angle on your brush, it leaves the product on. Okay, so now look. See? Deposits color. So high angle squeegee takes color off, or base coat, or whatever gel you're using, you can squeegee the gel off like so. And if you want to deposit color, you're going to use a more parallel angle to the hand. And one thing to notice about clients is you can absolutely tip the hand up and down as you're working. So rather than breaking your wrist doing this, right, having to go up and down, notice how much it puts pressure on my wrist right here. Make the person's hand move. Just tip their hand up and down, leave your hand in about the same position, and then you can kind of, as you're here and you go through, tip their hand up as you're working. And you'll notice I do that a lot. I kind of move both my hand and the client. It makes it much easier for me to apply product, okay? So again, I'm going to take gel on just one side of my brush. Use more than you think you need, honestly. That's so key. Start down here so I don't flood the cuticle, okay? And you kind of use like a patting motion, and I don't put pressure on my brush. I'm just pretending it's like a little spatula. And when I get to the cuticle area, I can just put some product right in front of my bristles and push that up to the cuticle area, okay? Like that. So I call that the bulldoze. So you put product in front of your brush and you bulldoze it up to the cuticle area and push, and then stop when you get close. Some people also like to turn their brush and do kind of a swoop thing. You can do that as well, but I like the bulldoze. I think it's the easiest for people to learn. And then what you do is you just kind of pull the product down nice and slow. Not a lot of pressure because we don't want to remove any of the product that we just applied. And you can kind of swoop to get into any more oval areas and just pull it down, okay? So you'll notice also what I'm doing with my brush is I call this the tickle, 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 pull. You'll see a lot of people do this. Why do we do this? Well, it helps us to deposit the color up here, because a lot of times when you're first learning how to do color gel, you end up with a bald spot of color right here. And it's because you're basically putting the product down and then pulling it, and so you end up with a lot of product at the cuticle, kind of a bulge. You end up with a bald spot right here, and then here, because of your high angle, you actually end up getting like a lip. So if I put this right here. Typical gel beginners, they have a big bulge at the cuticle, a dip right here in the center, and then it bulges up again on the tip of the nail right about here. And just because you're using a very high angle with your brush, so you're basically scraping gel off here and then depositing it at the end of the nail. That's how you get the hump. So instead of doing that, what we do is we deposit the color nice and light, and then we just pull it through. So you kind of do a tap, 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 and pull, tap, 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 and pull. And that will absolutely change your application so quickly, and it'll also make your nails perfectly smooth from the side. Okay? So nice and smooth. So that's how we deposit color, how we apply color. How we squeegee off color, so if I want to take off the excess gel on my brush, again, high angle, clean brush, I'm going to put a lot of pressure, and I'm going to squeegee off the product. Okay, so notice it's only on one side, and I can actually put that back in my jar if I want to. So I can squeegee off, and this happens if you put too much on, you can squeegee it off just by using a high angle and pressure on your bristles. And as you notice also when we did base coat, I put pressure on my brush and kind of squeegeed like this and shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. But when we're doing color or when we're doing builder gel, we actually just want to get that wet layer down and then just very lightly distribute color across the whole entire nail. Okay? All right, so that is application and removal. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly is how we troubleshoot. So what happens when we accidentally cure gel on our brushes? And this happens a lot, especially with beginners. I remember I forgot about the fact that lamps cure gel, and I accidentally left my brushes in the doorway of my lamp while it was curing stuff, and it did. It cleansed, it cured my bristles on my brush. So what we can do is with a foil wrap, if you have one of these for taking off gel polish manicures, once in a blue moon isn't going to kill your brush. So if you do cure product in your brush, put some acetone on your nail wrap like this. And then you're going to put your acetone on the pad, or you can use a cotton ball, but I like these ones that have the pre-made pads on them. I think they're really nice. So you're going to put your acetone on your pad, put your brush here, and actually it helps if you kind of bend this so you can see where the end of the bristles are going to go. So I do it like that so that a little bit of that pad goes up and over the other side. And I try to keep the acetone away from up in here because there is glue in here that keeps these bristles together. It is crimped, but there is also glue. So the more you can kind of line this up and just barely put enough acetone on here to soak these bristles, you can put this on here, wrap your brushes like a little burrito, okay? And again, try and keep it nice and flat because your brush is flat. You don't want to mess up the bristles. But you can just let these soak with some acetone, and a lot of times the gel will come out of your bristles. And then when it does come out, you can use a spatula very gently to scrape off any of the cured gel. Sometimes that will salvage your brushes. All right, so that's one troubleshooting technique. Also, what happens if you have a very thin striper, which I have one in here. Okay. So I have a very thin striper that sometimes I forget to put the cap on and it gets kind of bent, or maybe it accidentally got smashed in my suitcase or something and now it's got a little bend on the top. Take boiling hot water, after you've cleansed all the residual product out of it, take boiling hot water, stick your brush in really, really hot water, and it will help to relax those bristles. And then once it's relaxed, put some clear gel on it, squeegee the excess off, and really train the brush to go back into that pointed form and put the cap back on. Boiling water does magic on bent brushes. So anytime you have frayed brushes, bent brushes, anything that got smushed, crinkled, anything, boiling water will do the trick to soften those bristles and get them to kind of lay flatter again. And then you can retrain them by leaving clear gel on them, keeping them squeegeed and keeping them capped. Okay? All right. And last but not least, I know this has been a long-winded thing about brushes, but I feel like there's a lot that goes into brushes. The last thing I wanted to talk about is don't use your mouth, your hands, your arms, anything to clean your brushes. You want to keep gel off of your skin, and we talked about this a little bit before, but I see a lot of people that they're so in the habit of cleaning their brush with their bare hand. I've even seen people put their brush in their mouth to lick it for whatever reason, which is gross because there's a lot of bacteria in our mouths. But the biggest issue is we're putting uncured product on our skin, and that is exactly how you get allergies. And if you're doing that day in and day out all the time doing nails, you're absolutely at risk for allergies. So don't use your bare hands to clean your brushes, okay? I want you guys to be using a palette, a mat, a wipe, something, but don't use your hand to pinch your brush. So as you noticed when I was recapping my brushes, instead of using my hand to pinch it back into shape, I merely either use the wipe or I use my table to put it back in shape and then I cap it, okay? It's a very, very good habit for you guys to have, which is do not touch your brushes with any bare skin. Don't wipe the excess on your arm. Even if you're painting, do not wipe anything on your skin because that is exactly how you get allergies, all right? So we are going to close out this lesson with our do's and don'ts. We talked about keep your brushes capped. Absolutely. Want to keep them away from air and light. And we want to also use solvent-free gel to keep on our brushes so that that doesn't dry out and dry out our brushes. Be gentle. Always use your brushes in one direction. Pretend they're a spatula and don't fray those bristles by smushing it back and forth. And buy more than one brush. Have one for clear, have one for dark, have one for glitter. Because if you're mixing and matching, you're going to get glitter in your clear gel, you're going to get dark gel in your clear gel. Everything just becomes a mess. So I recommend if you find a brush that you like, get 3 or 4 of them so that you can designate them for specific things. Don't over cleanse. You don't need to be using cleanser, acetone, all that stuff to clean your brushes every time. Leave gel on them. Don't smash or smush. Don't buy brushes without caps. If you can, please do not buy brushes without caps because you're just going to run into so many issues with that. Don't mix color and clear brushes, and we talked about designating them and also marking them and how we can do that. Don't apply pressure when applying because that's going to act as a squeegee effect, and do not touch your skin. I cannot stress that enough. Don't touch your skin ever with uncured product. Big, big no-no. Because if you want to be in this career for a long time, allergies is one of those things you cannot go back from it. So I want to make sure you guys are doing this responsibly, whether you're a DIYer, whether you're a professional nail tech. Don't touch uncured product on your skin. And that even goes for acrylic monomer. Don't put monomer on your skin either. I see so many people like pinching their brushes. Don't put monomer on your skin. All these products that we use for nails are chemicals. They are reasonably safe chemicals that we can use safely when they're used by the manufacturer's instructions. But please, please, please be very cognizant of what you're doing. Don't put stuff in your hair, in your teeth, in your boobs, in your, whatever. Keep the chemicals away from your skin, okay? All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. I'll let April say bye to you today, and I'll be in touch next week with another video. Bye.